Take a pit stop for all things NASCAR with the Four Tire Change podcast. Here is your host, Dawson Iserlo.
It's the Four Tire Change podcast, ESPN Southwest Louisiana. Dawson Iserlo with you here as another week of the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs has come to a close. And this, in my opinion, was maybe the most exciting playoff race so far. A lot of different factors coming into this thing and a lot of different strategies. It's the way I love to see Cup Series racing when you come down the stretch. So let's get right into it. Coming into Vegas, right, the round reset, round of 8. 8 drivers for 4 spots. This is where it really starts to heat up. We talked about how stacked the field was, the unfortunate circumstances, involving Alex Bowman not being a part of this round, but that allowed Joey Logano to get in. Knew how good the mile and a halves have been, right? And that's kind of after the round that's got all those different disciplines in it where you're talking about a road course and you're talking about a drafting track, to get back to kind of some of the traditional tracks that this car runs better at. I was excited for it. Not to say I don't love the excitement of Talladega and what the drama a road course can bring, but was really excited to see what it would look like when we kind of saw, all right, who's going to be able to execute the best, who's going to bring the most speed to the racetrack, and who's going to live up underneath the pressure of the playoffs. And I think we kind of saw an example of that on Sunday afternoon. So, first couple of stages, there's some comers and goers, right? And some cars who really get some stage points that are going to help them out. We're going to talk about those stage points in just a little bit. Some drivers having some issues. Denny Hamlin just never felt like it. Felt like he was fighting against it right all day to get back in the mix, but he did, and we'll also talk about that. But Christopher Bell, it starts to look into that second stage like, all right, there's the car to beat today. There's the driver who's, and look, he's done it before, the round of 8. When Bell needs a performance, I've said it all season long, when he needs it, he's going to go get it. And they brought a tremendously fast race car to Vegas, and he was kind of the favorite for a large portion of this thing. Then you get the incidences, right? The accidents. Tyler Reddick out, involved in a crash. Chase Elliott also in that same incident. Ryan Blaney, a third car involved. 3 playoff drivers who have major issues, and they're going to finish Reddick 35th, Blaney 32nd, Elliott 33rd. And they're now, as it plays out, all going to put themselves in a really tough spot moving forward. Denny Hamlin had issues, but did fight back, and we'll get to it in a minute. Denny Hamlin ends up finishing this race in the top 10, so it was kind of honestly a nice surprise to see him battle his way back into it. Some of the other drivers that are in this mix here, you're talking about Kyle Larson, you're talking about William Byron as being playoff drivers, and then there's Joey Logano just lurking, just hanging around. And Logano, we knew, had a points deficit to try and overcome this week and going into it because he just got in based off of disqualification. But it was going to be kind of fascinating to see, overall how Logano managed that points deficit if he had to. Well, then we get into the final stage of this race, and it's what I'm talking about is just really enjoying kind of the parity involved and the strategy differentials. I'm not a huge fan of when we have, a mile and a half race where it's a bunch of restarts, you just re-rack everybody. Driver in the front drives away, and we just don't have all that much action. I want to see different strategies. All right, we're going to try and make it on fuel mileage. I like long green flag runs in these things. I know not everybody does, and that's perfectly fine. But what we end up having right is this long green flag stretch to end this thing, and you're going, okay, some drivers in the front, Daniel Suarez, who had a really nice run, Joey Logano, they're going to try and stay out here. Christopher Bell and some of the other leaders, they pit, they go ahead. They get their tires, they get their fuel, they don't have to save, and now go try and run them down with, 30, 40 laps left, whatever it was. And so now we have this mix of strategy where you go, what causes that? A, non-playoff drivers kind of feeling like they have nothing to lose, right? So Daniel Suarez has really nothing to lose. He's been eliminated from the playoffs. So he goes, I'm going to go for the win. I don't care what happens. Christopher Bell's not in that spot. He's going, I need points regardless, so I don't want to have a disaster. Let's go get our tires. And we still probably at that point thought that might be the strategy to win the race. Logano in a little different spot, right? He's in the playoffs, but at the same time he goes, I got a large points deficit to try and overcome. If I could win this race, that would take a lot of pressure off. Let's be aggressive. Let's go for the kind of the winning strategy. The other element to Logano's strategy that I'm going through and thinking to myself, I don't know if this is exactly going to work out the way he wants it to, is he's behind Suarez. So you're sitting there going, even if he stays out, he might finish second behind. So even if this all works out, it still might be second because Suarez might just stay ahead of him. Well, as it plays out, you've got Bell charging from behind, and the broadcast team, I thought, did a great job of kind of tracking what's the deficit, how much are they making up per lap, how close is it going to be, and they were saying, like, it isn't going to be close. Like, it's going to be down the last couple laps. How much do those drivers in the front kind of save, and how much do they have left? Did they save enough fuel as we went on here? Did they save any tire, compound as well? Like it was very interesting to see how this all goes down. And eventually, what happens? Suarez actually gets passed by Logano. So now you're going, okay, the strategy is going perfectly for Joey Logano because they both don't run out of fuel, but yet Suarez gets passed up. Logano's trying to stay in front. He's got lap cars that are kind of, helping him out because, Bell's got to use different lines. And Bell's running him down, and we get inside 5 laps to go, and it feels like he's going to be right there at the end. And that's exactly what happens. Logano has him by a half second in the last lap. If this race goes 2 more laps, I'm 100% confident Bell passes him. If it goes 1 more lap, I think there's a good chance he gets by, but it doesn't. And Joey Logano hangs on for an upset win. And from out of the playoffs to a DQ helping him survive, Joey Logano is going back to the championship for. Some things aren't all that fair, right? I bet Alex Bowman's sitting there going, are you serious? That should have been me. But the 22 team finds a way, and they do it off strategy. They do it off creativity, fuel mileage, and somehow they're going to be there at Phoenix with a chance to win this thing. And for Logano, it's going to be a chance to win his 3rd Drivers' Championship. So just unbelievable. Christopher Bell, you saw him. He was gut-wrenched after this thing. He's like, I can't believe we let that one go. And again, I don't think they let it go. They got beat by an really unique strategy that was very risky and barely worked, but it did. So, with that being said, Bell is still in a great spot. Let's go through the point standings here. Logano's in. He does not have to worry about points anymore. He is going to be able to go for wins at the next 2 races before Phoenix, which, again, even the points don't matter at Phoenix, so those wins would just be trophies on the case here. As far as the playoff points, Joey Logano no longer has to worry about them until he gets to Phoenix where he tries to win the title. Christopher Bell's plus 42. He's still in a great spot. As long as he brings fast cars each of the next 2 weeks and stays out of trouble, he's going to race for the championship. Kyle Larson's at plus 35. He's in a similar spot, right? Not quite as good as Bell is, but in a really good situation. I'd be pretty surprised if the 5 car is not a factor at this thing at Phoenix. William Byron's plus 27. And so we'll get to some of the reasons why this margin is so big. But yeah, Byron's still not quite as good, and you certainly feel way better about Bell than you do Byron with a 15-point difference. But you're able to get some stage points and things like that, you're going to be fine. Stage points are part of the reason that deficit's so high. Those guys were able to execute and get their stage points. Denny Hamlin was not. He finishes 8th in this race. He comes all the way back to finish 8th, and yet he's 27 points below the cut line. Part of that was the playoff points coming in, where he didn't have as many, and we can go back to the penalties and some of the things that I think were really unfortunate and unfair for Denny. But even with a good finish, he's still in the fight. He can still get in on points, especially if he does maximize some stage opportunities at the next 2 tracks. But Denny is minus 27. Tyler Reddick's minus 30. He finishes 35th, like I mentioned. Luckily for him, he had a little bit of stage help at the beginning. Ryan Blaney is minus 47. Chase Elliott's minus 53. For those two, again, it's possible if you maximize on stages, I guess, because you're talking about 40 stage points up for grabs total, and then if you get good finishes and you have some guys get in trouble, they got to win. I mean, that's what it feels like. It feels like Ryan Blaney or Chase Elliott have to win. Ryan Blaney did win at Martinsville last year on his way to the championship. So there you go. Chase Elliott has done it before in the past as well. So they're not out of this thing, and they certainly could go to each of these next 2 tracks and win the race. But they're not in a great spot. So all things considered, the top 4 feel really good about where they are. The leader feels great because he's in no matter what. And then a lot of work to do past that. Homestead is the next opportunity. Excited about Homestead. Look, I wish it would be back in the rotation of the championship race, if not the solo, place that the championship is held the way it used to be. I'd love to see it at least in the mix because it's such a great mile and a half. And we should see a lot of different strategies. Again, Reddick's going to rip the wall the entire time. You're going to have other drivers try and search for grip on the bottom. I'm excited for it, and we'll see, does it even make sense for Blaney or Elliott to go for points here? And I don't really think it does. They're going for race wins. If you're Denny Hamlin, yeah, you're trying to maximize stage points early and kind of see where you are. And if you go to Martinsville with a fighting chance, then you feel, that's the best you can do. And does anybody get in trouble? We saw, like I said, Reddick, Blaney, Elliott wrecking out of this race, or at least have significant damage to where they were a bunch of laps down. Does that happen to Bell, Larson, or Byron? And those are the 3 that it matters for. Remember, Logano, it doesn't matter. He doesn't need points. That'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. So it should be a whole lot of fun. Homestead and Martinsville, the last 2 races here this round, and we know what can happen when you get to Martinsville and kind of the, not randomness of it, but just the, how difficult it is to execute a full race there. But a lot of the drivers in these playoffs have wins at that track and have done it before. So I'm excited to see how it plays out, and we'll see. For a race winner for Homestead, I'm going Kyle Larson. I just think the 5 team's been so consistent and solid. They kind of have the freedom of having that 35-point buffer. I think if they're there, if they get some stage points, they'll go, let's go for this thing. And, outside of some of these races where he's gotten in trouble, he's been up at the front every single week. So I'm going to go with the 5 car. But, look, it'd be really fascinating if one of these cars at the bottom wins and then flips that bubble again. Could have some really fascinating storylines heading to Martinsville. So that'll do it for 4 Tire Change. Continue to like, comment, subscribe. And we'll be back next week rolling you through all the way to the NASCAR Cup Series Championship.